Hi everyone, and today it's Busting Life Challenges with me, Diane Parker, and joining me on my podcast is the lovely Janet Hogan. Now, I've met Janet because I'm going through a situation that I never actually thought I'd ever face in my life, which is estrangement. And going looking for some support, I found Janet. Janet, welcome. Would you introduce yourself and tell people what it is that you do?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for inviting me along to be able to share some things for anyone who's listening who might find this useful. So I'm an estranged mother myself, and I found myself in a situation many years ago where the relationship with one of my children seemed to be really falling apart. And I never forget that feeling of extreme loneliness and isolation, where I no longer really understood or recognized my own child. But it wasn't a problem I could take to my local doctor, and I didn't really know anything about therapy at the time. So I just remember sitting on the floor weeping and going, who do I turn to? And I never forget that feeling of isolation. And it was so strong in me that when I finally did reach out and speak to a therapist, it definitely helped. But for me, it didn't seem to really resolve what the real issue was. And so fast forward many, many years, what I realized was a lot of the pain that the estrangement had brought up in me was in fact an amplification of some kind of pain that had been there all along that I basically spent most of my life running away from. So the message I have is that if you find yourself in a situation where you're going through something like this, that is fairly life devastating, and you don't know what to do, then probably the worst thing you can do is try and bury or suppress it or run away from it, as I did initially. And what seems to work is to reach out for help, get some kind of support, ideally talking to other estranged mothers or parents who understand your situation.
Absolutely. And that's the difference really between coaching and therapy. We don't see you as broken, but there's an issue for you that you want to try and expand and get some help and do some deep diving on. And indeed, we're going to come together to do a masterclass to help people just going through this issue. I was reaching out for help, and it was only a comment that attracted me to you and the way you phrased it. Because the trouble with groups is when you join them, you can actually start getting dragged down with the energy from their sadness as well. When I go looking for something, it's because I want steps or want the help to help me grieve my loss. So I was ever so glad that I found you for this aspect and this support that you give in empowering women. So what made you actually step out and reach out to other people?
Well, on this particular issue, so I've been working for some time in the space of helping people process their emotions, in particular their shadow, actually. So an aspect of ourselves that we don't normally confront or get to know, but more in the entrepreneurial space. So typically working with businessmen who are feeling burnt out, or people at a crossroads in their career and not having a clear path forward. And I always look for a level of discomfort or pain in people, because that's the greatest catalyst for change. You know, it's very hard to sit with pain for a long time. But then something happened in my life where my daughter got back in touch with me, but it wasn't a hi mum letter at all. It was actually a legal threat to take me to court and then shame me on social media and smear me and ruin my reputation. And up till this point, I'd been putting up with this behavior because I was fearful of letting her go, if you like, or her never speaking to me again. And that fear was driving my behavior down the wrong path. So what happened, I woke up, it was my 61st birthday, and I thought this feeling in me, it was almost like a little flame that started to just ignite. And I had this feeling of, I'm not going to take this anymore. And I thought, if she's going to smear me on social media, I'll do it to myself. And so it was almost like admitting that here I was, this great shame that I carried that I didn't really want to talk to anyone else about. I thought, you know what, I'll just put it out there that this is what's happened. My daughter's not talking to me. You probably think I'm a rotten mother, but you know what? I don't mind if you think that. I just need to express this. And when I hit post, I went, oh my God, what have I done? And then I came back to the computer about 10 minutes later, and weirdly, all these people had responded in an affirmative way. It's like, oh, I know someone in that situation, or I really resonate with that. And this just lit in me a little spark. It said, you mean I'm not the only one out there? And so from that moment, the momentum built, and I started reaching out to and joining other Facebook groups, reaching out to women and having long chats with them just to see if there really was a group of people out there who, like I had, really needed help. And I found there was.
Yeah, hands up, I'm one of them. As much as, you know, we are coaches, we always need that extra little help to help us through these difficult times, because you can't always find the solutions with the same head that's kind of making the problems. And I think for me too, the hardest thing was to take my relationship with my son through my process of letting go of hopes, dreams and expectations of what you believe the relationship is going to be. That took me about nearly 2 years to do, because I didn't want to let go. But I found also in doing some work with a colleague called Sebastian that, and when I looked into saboteurs that are around us and understanding them a little bit more deeper than I'd done in the past, that my restless saboteur was still trying to make his life as easy as I possibly could. My husband had a long-term illness, and I'd kind of made my family my mission instead of my life, if you know what I mean. Everything was about them. And so, you know, I just wanted to make sure they had fun and they had a fantastic childhood. That was my mission. And I was still doing it, more so when he died. I had to also fill another part of this role of helping and supporting and nurturing. And then I realized what I was doing, and it was the restless saboteur. And of course, you and I know that, you know, just deal with it and it can be sorted. And it's like, what are you doing? Let's just get this done. Restless, restless. When I realized that, I just stopped. And then it allowed for energetic movement the other side. There's no conclusion to this or anything yet, but I know that there's been movement. I've had a mediator involved to help me with my process in that regard. But for me, it was the process of letting go. It's so hard as a loving mother to do that. We want to keep them in cotton wool, don't we? Give them that perfect life.
Well, yeah, that's right. And, you know, we're used to the idea of letting go in terms of waving them goodbye when they go to college or university, but to let them go in circumstances that feel so dark and so unresolved, and that back of mind thought that I hear from so many women, what if I die and we haven't reconciled? That comes up time and time again. And you know, of course, unfortunately, this is something that we can't control. And as mothers watching our little babies grow into toddlers, grow into children and then teenagers, we did exercise a certain degree of control. So that's been programmed into us as a habit. And so there comes a time when we actually have to realize it's their choice. And the more we cling on to this need to reconnect, the more energetically they sense that and are pushed away from us. So the very action that we're doing, even, you know, sending a card on a birthday, as loving as that feels, could be exactly the thing to not do. And in fact, you're exacerbating the problem by further pushing them away. Quite often, children just need space, and particularly from any of us who might be overly empathic and nurturing.
Absolutely. Because my fear was the other side of that was, why didn't you keep trying to reach me? Why didn't you do X, Y, and Z to keep letting me know that you were there, and this kind of thing? So in my mind, I've ticked that box in one of my letters to him, that I just sort of spoke from the heart, and I said, you know, this door is always open. You just need to stop running down the path you're doing, turn around and come back. That's as easy as that. And as for connecting with them, I do believe that we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. So for me, if I can sit in that stillness and that quietness of meditation and connection, then I can connect with his higher self and his partner's higher self, because they're just humans. Their spirits having a human experience for whatever reason they've picked what they're doing. Yeah, that's just my belief, and I do get peace from that. But I'm really excited that we are going to come together to do this deep diving in this workshop that we're going to be doing, to help people like you and I who are on the cusp and don't really know what to do. They want to move from the pain they're in to start living a bit of a life for themselves. And I think that is so powerful to do, Janet, and I bless you for taking action and doing what you did. And I'm just so pleased that the universe has put us together. When people first approach you for guidance, what kind of guidance can you offer them to give them the steps or hope, or where are we at with that?
Yeah. Well, one of the way I approach this situation, I come from a very pragmatic place. That doesn't mean I'm not empathic. The reason I do this work is because I know the pain so well. I've experienced it firsthand, and it's not as if it ever goes away totally, but I understand that terrible feeling of not just being isolated, but not knowing what the next step is. So basically, I put together a program. It's not like therapy at all. Therapy tends to just wander along, and you never really know from week to week what you'll end up talking about. It's a more spontaneous type of approach, I suppose. What I do is way more structured. So it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And where I think the best place to begin is to actually start to entertain an idea of a better future. Because when we're stuck in this swamp of sadness, it's really, really hard to see any light at the end of the tunnel. So I think the thing to understand is there is definitely a light, and also that there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You haven't done anything wrong. And the only thing that you can control in all of this is yourself. So there's no judgment or criticism in this space. It's just about, okay, how do we get you from where you are now to where you want to be? And sometimes we can get so caught up in the weight of the emotion, we don't know where we want to be. So I know what that feels like. I had a coach once who said to me, Janet, write down a list of the top 10 things that you would like in your life. And I just looked at the page and started tearing up. I couldn't think of one thing I actually wanted. I couldn't imagine even feeling happy. It was just like a thought that was beyond me. So the first thing that I offer people as a way of getting out of that swamp of sadness is a process. I call it the magic triangle. And basically it's an invitation to isolate the things that are most important for you on a level that speaks to your heart rather than your head. So your head will say, oh, I'd like some more money in the bank, please. Or, oh, I'd love a new car. Or how about an extra room in the house? You know, it goes straight to that space of comparison and keeping up with the Joneses. And the heart, however, really knows what we need as against want. And so that's where we need to tap into. So I have an exercise that helps people get clarity on that. And I know, Diane, you did this exercise.
I did. I'm so super excited right now as you're going to talk me through it. But yeah. I mean, it was very interesting what you just said, because I've done these sort of things before, and yet it feels safer with your head to pick the things that might be materialistic or that kind of thing. But when you're doing this deep diving work, then that connection from the heart is definitely where we start to empower ourselves. But yeah, I'm super excited about what you're going to tell me. I have to tell you the reasons why I chose them, but I'll listen to you first.
Yeah. So I work with triangles. What I like about triangles is that they're made up of 3 sides, as you know, and I can remember 3 things. If you ask me to try and remember 5 or 7, my head gets very confused. The short-term memory loss kicks in. So there's something very simple about a triangle that I love, and as a shape, it's something that's immutable. You can't bend it out of shape. It's solid. And so what I do is I take geometry, the simple geometry of a triangle, and basically I wrap language around it, because if we can understand more about ourselves using language or the power of words, that's a really, really good place to start to build our self-awareness. And a lot of the pain that we're feeling in this estrangement space is we are so attached to the identity of being a mother that there's fear around what happens if I take off the mummy mask? What if there's no one behind the mask? So this work, reconnecting with your heart, starts to build yourself from the inside out. So that's the power of it. Yeah. So looking at your combination, Di. So imagine a triangle facing upwards, and at the bottom we have 2 beautiful, what I call core needs. On the left we have expansion, and on the right we have adventure. So these are things that speak to your heart, essentially, Diane.
Yeah.
And then at the top, we have energy. So that's what we call your core need. So that's like the star at the top of the Christmas tree, that your inner being says, you know what, if I really want to be who I know I can become, I need more energy. That's what I'm missing right now. Yeah. Okay. So now what I'm going to ask you, because there's more to this than meets the eye, I just would love to get some clarity on the 3 core needs, Diane. So let's start with the one on the bottom left, expansion. Can you tell me a little bit about that, what that would look like for you if you had more expansion in your life? Expansion, what would that look and feel like?
Me, feels like, as is happening in my business, things are expanding. So I'm reaching more people to help them with their grief and understand grief. And I think expansion in just being, I don't know, you understand what I mean by that, but those listening may not, but it's like an energy to expand and to then for attract and bring people to me that are ready to start the process of healing their grief rather than staying stuck in it. So that's what was behind that word for me. Yeah.
And so just playing that back to you, so I'm hearing expansion on a physical level, not as in getting physically bigger, right? But we don't need that. but the expansion of the business. So the business growing, becoming more impactful. So that's on the physical level. And then on a different level, let's say it's on an emotional or even spiritual level, there's an expansion in terms of your growth, we say we can either spiral upwards and expand, or we can spiral downwards and go down a rabbit hole. And so it's so easy for us to spiral downwards and get into that smaller, ever shrinking vortex. But what you're talking about here is an expansion outwards. So becoming a bigger person emotionally, able to hold space for more people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that sounds really solid. All right. Now, adventure. Adventure can mean so many different things to different people. What does it mean to you, Diane?
To just start and have a little bit more fun in my life, to start to venture out and have a few holidays. I mean, since I haven't actually been off, I'm on the Isle of Man, folks. So I haven't been actually off the island since 2018. I mean, as many people haven't been away. So I've actually, since doing that little triangle, I've booked a little trip to Northern Ireland. So I'm really super excited about that. It's going to be time out as well as exploring. So that's going to be a little bit of an adventure. So I thought, yay, it's working already. But yeah, it's I mean, I'm not like talking about climbing Mount Everest or anything like that. To me, life can be an adventure. It's just putting some more fun and energy in the adventure rather than a routine. And that's the place I like to work. As you know, I like to listen to Abraham Hicks, so I've been following that with an energy every day, right? What would be fun for me to work on in my business today, type energy, and things have been changing and flowing far more easily, because I've often thought this shouldn't be as hard as it seems to be, and it's not when you get into that space. So that to me is the adventure. And then also, expanding and growing in that field too of being and knowing and getting to know yourself better and all the rest of it. And that's why I think these little hiccups come in our life to help us do just that as well. But
oh, definitely.
So that's what I meant by adventure.
Okay, so just playing that back to make sure I've got it. So it's on 2 levels, isn't it? So in the physical plane, it's literally going out to new places, places that represent the unknown, and in some cases that might mean stepping out of our comfort zone too. So having fun, exploring, literally getting outside of our 4 walls that we tend to dwell inside. And then again, on an emotional level, it's playing in a bigger arena. That's what I'm hearing too, that as your business expands, it's going to present challenges too, like growing pains. You're going to be doing new things that you mightn't have tried before. But if we can reframe that rather than fear of the unknown as an adventure and bring an element of fun into it, that's what I'm hearing also, that we start to see growth as something that is not beyond us, something that we step into, even if it feels a bit uncomfortable at first.
Yeah, as Abraham herself says, if you're going down the river of life in your destiny, which is the boat, there's white water rapids occasionally you have to hang on to, and enjoy the process of that, rather than being stuck. Oh, this has happened, that's happened, and literally going with the flow of it, because what you want on the other side of it is much bigger and better for you. So I'm open to that kind of adventure too. I'm wanting to start a non-profit, but I'll talk to you about that another time. But that's kind of what I'm picking up when you've just fed that back to me.
So the whitewater rafting is a great example, actually. So in other words, instead of resisting, when fear comes up, we'll resist. But if you just allow yourself to go over those rapids, you go, oh wow, that was great. There's a buzz around that. We feel when we do something that we would normally recoil from, it might be too scary, it might bring up fear in us, and instead we just push through anyway, and we grow each time we do that. So okay, what about energy? Tell us about energy.
I need some energy to do it. I have felt quite depleted of energy recently. I've started doing a fasting program to help realign things in the body, and they kind of said this kind of fatigue-ish might happen while the body's readjusting, so I'm getting used to that bit. But I think it's doing things now to boost my energy again. Whether that is getting out on the bike and doing a bit of actual physical exercise to just raise the levels. And I think energetically, what this last 6 months has been completely draining. Things have happened that have shook me up to the core. But from that, it almost like it's cracked the crust on that chrysalis and the butterflies trying to get out. So the energy is that part that's going to come to help me with the other two parts, but they're all kind of interlinked and will help each other, I feel, come together. So what's your take on that?
Well, I was just going to ask you, Diane, do you find, going through that, what I noticed, and I noticed this in myself too, is just constantly asking questions, ruminating, why did I do this? What if I'd done this differently? Did you find yourself falling into that as well? Did that affect your sleep, did you find, or did it have any detrimental effects on your health generally?
It did do, for sure. And there's often sometimes at night your last thought might be of him and what's going on. In my case, it's a him. But I'm a big advocate and fan of Doterra Oils, and they have one called Serenity. So I just fill up the diffuser with that and just fill the bedroom with that smell, and then I have a very peaceful sleep.
Yeah, I've got masses of oils on my table. I won't show you my table. There's so many oils on it, but yeah, I know they're great. I very much, and it's about then it's been since January more about self-care and building on the self-care. My power words for this year, because I did another little workshop with somebody, was me. When I came down through all the words that she had, it was me, and then added to that worthiness. And then at first it felt a wee bit foreign, because I've mothered since I was 4.5 years of age when my sisters came along. Whether or not that's actually what happened is not, the reality is not important, it's the feeling and attachment to it. So I've done some work on that. This last 6 months have been like a completely turning around point for me in that. And I think it's also then letting go, because I've been very, obviously, since Andrew died, and you've lost that support that you've always had. You've had to find your own feet, and that's been very foreign.
But yeah, so I'm in a much better place where I'm at now, where I'm starting to learn to know that it's okay, because as a mother, our attention always goes to the children, and that's the way we're brought up. You look after them first, and they're your priority, and
That's
then
right.
the husband, and then somewhere along the line we get lost in the mix of everything.
Yeah, and we end up feeling depleted of energy. So going back to energy, what we're talking about now is getting out of this this well of negative thoughts, disconnection from ourselves, self-blame, guilt, shame, which takes our energy away, and actually replacing that with something new in our lives. So in your case, I'll explain how this plays out. So what's really, really interesting about the triangle, I call this the law of the, this is like Janet's law of the triangle, right? But it just, after doing this with a lot of people, I started to see this really interesting pattern. And what the law states is that whatever is at the base of the triangle will create what's at the top. And so in that way, it describes your path. So what it's saying, these two things, expansion and adventure, are ultimately what will give you what you yearn for most, which is more energy. So when you think about it, if you start to commit to this idea of, instead of contracting but expanding, so not just staying put, because there's no such thing as staying put, is there? It's impossible. We're dynamic people. So if we tend to live in fear, if we go, you know, I'm in this terrible situation where blah, blah, blah has happened, what that will tend to we will tend to contract, we will constrict, we'll get smaller physically, we'll go like that, we'll hunch up, wrap ourselves in a little ball, forget to breathe, not eat properly or overeat. That's what happens when we allow fear and shame and all those other, you know, heavy emotions take over. So expansion is the opposite. So it's a commitment to going, okay, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to really start to take my blinkers off and go, okay, how can I take my work? Where can I take it further? You know, recording this podcast, running this, talking to me in Bali of all places, other side of the world, your whole world is growing now, it's expanding. And so expansion plus adventure, it's the enticement of adventure, of going into the unknown, that suddenly takes you out of, again, that heavy headspace, which affects sleep and all sorts of things, quality of life. So these two factors together, these two needs, expansion and adventure, when you bring them together, they alchemize to produce energy. That's what you get at the end of it. You're going to be able to, you feel more alive, do more. And here's what's interesting. What's at the top of your triangle is your greatest need. When you achieve it, it tends to be what you have to give to others. It's the gift you have to give to others. So it's only alchemizing now. It's only starting. You know, the pot's we've only just put the fire under the pot now. It hasn't come to the boil yet. But imagining, if you stay on this path, what will happen is that the gift that you have to give to others is greater energy as well. And you can interpret that so many ways, a way of feeling alive, good in your skin, you know, vibrating at a higher level, however you want to call that. So ultimately, what you most want for yourself when you get it, the natural progression from there is to say, hey, I want others to feel the way I feel. And that's really a byproduct of self-love. Yeah. So achieving that self-love, looking after yourself well, eating the right stuff, doing the oils that, you know, bring you to life. All of those are signs that you're treating yourself well. And here's the interesting outtake from this too. I believe if we really embrace self-love, and a lot of people might go, oh, what does that mean? I love myself, or I don't want to know about that. This is honoring these three core needs as an act of self-love. When we do that, when we put ourselves first, weird things happen to those around us. Instead of repelling them with our energy, we start to draw them in. And so if there were ever a time that our children, for instance, would want to come back into our lives, it's way more likely when we're in that space of giving to ourselves than when we're sacrificing ourselves for them.
Yeah. And I think that to a degree is the journey that's been chosen, so that I get to this point, as well as whatever he's learning on his journey.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So just to summarize the triangle, so your vision for yourself is energy. That's what it's all about. That's ultimately what you stand to give others, to get them into a good energy space. There are so many ways you can interpret energy, so that they attract other like-minded people into their lives. And the way that you're going to do that is by staying on this expansion route and bringing as much adventure, which means getting out of your comfort zone, into your life as you can.
Yes, been doing a lot of that recently, but
Yeah.
that's brilliant, Janet. And so if somebody listening to this would like to have a go at that triangle, because I would highly recommend it, how would they find it?
Well, I suppose we could share it here in the podcast. Could we share the link? Yeah. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to share, to just click the link below. And if you do that, then yeah, I'll receive a copy as well, and I'll reach out to you. And if you want to take it further and go, okay, how do we, what does this mean for me? I'm happy to jump on a quick call and take you through that as well. And if you want to dive even deeper and go, okay, how do I bring this into my life in a realistic way? This is where it gets interesting, because as well as having an upward facing vision triangle, we also have a downward facing shadow triangle. And the way the shadow triangle works is to stop us achieving that vision triangle. So it exerts an equal and opposite force. So if you're feeling stuck, it's because your shadow triangle is there saying, don't change, don't change. Danger, Will Robinson, you know, it's pumping us with fear. And so this is, that is just a simple act of understanding what your shadow triangle is and reframing it so it becomes your triangle of core truths. And that's when, as a whole human, you can really ascend to new heights, and your whole quality of life changes for the better.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So what's your website there, Janet?
So my website is janethogan.com.
Okay.
And yeah, you'll find me there.
Facebook group.
Facebook group, yeah. You'll find me under Janet Hogan, Janet Hogan 925. It is. I'm on Facebook. And if you are an estranged mother and you do want to move forward with your life, not just forgetting, I'm not talking about forgetting the past, but if you really do feel that it's time for you to take a next step that's positive for you, then you're more than welcome to join our Facebook group to Estranged Mothers Rise and Thrive.
Well, that's just great. Thank you so much for being my guest today on my podcast, Janet. And I'm really looking forward to our masterclass. It's going to be held on the 15th of June at 2 p.m. And if you would like to join that, I will also drop the link down below this. Obviously, if this is a bit later on, there will be recordings, but only to those that have actually registered. Thank you again, Janet. And if you'd like to find out about me and my services, you can find me on www.lifeafterlossiom.com. Thank you very much.